You. Hey, 1208 online and 1208 in person. We've got the new streaming working out, so we're going to get ready to start. If you would like to sing with us, you can take on whatever posture that you would like as we worship, but if you could start by standing, that would be terrific. Got a mixture of some old and new songs tonight. Some of them so old you don't remember them. Some of them so new you don't remember them. Some of them in the middle. So, if you don't know them, sing them. If you do know them, sing them. Here we go.
Looks like
chose that song because somewhere in the midst of the pandemic, Janae came to me with a word that was helpful for me, just kind of an image of God coming down and soaking. It was kind of a personal thing that I needed at the time, because I think throughout the pandemic, things felt very dry, felt very difficult, and what we really needed was a good soak, just like plants during a drought when they're dying off, and you can see them, you can see the grass, your lawn, literally like crying out, come on, we need some rain just to carry on. I hope that as we kind of start that song, with that song today, it can kind of be a cry on all of our behalf. God, would you come and rain down? Would you come and bring the joy, the love, the peace, the patience, the kindness that we so desperately need as we keep pressing forward into perhaps the continuation of some sense of normalcy. So as we keep singing today and keep moving into worship, would you put your heart in that direction? Not just singing songs for the sake of singing songs, not just singing songs for the sake of educating ourselves, reminding ourselves of the story, but singing songs like they do in Revelation, where they're right before the face of God and they can't help but worship God, throw down their crowns, give him all their authority that they have, and just give it to him and say, use it how you will. Let's do that. Let's make worship a real cry to God to use us, to work through us. Use worship to submit our hearts to the place where it belongs, rather than the place where we want it to be. Letting worship, I want to say humble us, but I was going to use the word humiliate. Maybe that's sometimes just how humbled we need to be humiliated in the presence of God, like David, right? There he is. He's so happy about what God's done that his humbleness becomes humiliation. He's a king. He's a king. People do what he says, and yet he's out dancing around in his underwear, worshiping God, humiliating himself and humbling himself, because God is just that great. Don't dance around your underwear in here, please, but let's humble ourselves before God. This next song is You Came, and so kind of thinking over Lazarus, the story of Lazarus, that Jesus, we're wondering where he is, Martha, Mary, wondering where he's going to be, and then he does show up. He does come. He's late, but not so much in his time. He's late enough just for God's miracle to prove how much better the story is when God shows up at a different timing than humanity would have liked. So as we talk about God's reign coming, now let's walk in faith that he will come, and sing ahead of time, maybe before we even feel the outpouring.
I
you come not only in your own time, but as you come as you actually look, where we behold you in that way. Not trying to raise up a God in our own image, but trying to recognize the God who made us in his own image. Trying to recognize what in us is good, what in us is contorted, what in us is bad. Sin has affected so much, it's hard to tell sometimes. Even when we think that we're doing things with the best of intentions, sometimes we look back and you point the finger and say, that right there, Jamin, that right there was a mistake, something you need to repent of. Even though it seemed like good intentions at the time, you misinterpreted my son. You misunderstood his actions. So we repent and we turn. We worship Jesus, not as the Jesus that we want, as the Jesus as he actually is. Which was a big problem for the people of Jesus' time. He showed up and they already had him in a box. They already knew what they wanted him to look like. And when he looked like something else, they killed him. They called him a false prophet. They called him a heretic. And then they killed him. Sometimes today we seem to still crucify little bits of Jesus, pieces that we don't like. Well, Jesus, I wouldn't quite say it like that, like you did here in your gospel, so I'm going to crucify that one on the cross and try to put you in a different picture. Let's not be guilty of that. Let's see him as he is. Revelation's going to picture him as one with eyes of fire, head white as wool, voice sounds like waters. It's obviously not what he looks like. I think we'd all be freaked out. But the imagery that Revelation's painting is a symbolism of who he is and what he looks like. His eyes are flames of fire. He's passionate. He's consumed with passion. His head is white as wool. He's wise. He's full of all knowledge of all things. His voice, it sounds like waters. It's loud, it's roaring, it's thunderous, like a waterfall. Spirit of wisdom, open my eyes again. Spirit of revelation, open my heart again. Spirit of wisdom, open my eyes again. Spirit of revelation, open my heart, 'cause I wanna see you. Lord, I wanna see you rightly, Jesus. I wanna see you. Lord, I wanna see you rightly, Jesus. Spirit of wisdom, open my eyes again. Spirit of revelation, open my heart again. Spirit of wisdom, open my eyes again. Spirit of revelation, open my heart, 'cause I wanna see you. Lord, I wanna see you rightly, Jesus. I wanna see. Lord, I
sounds like waters. Jesus, you're beautiful. 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 Oceans of love can never contain all of your love, forever untamed. With one final breath, you vanquish my death and let you rest all my transgressions. Oceans of love never contain all of your love, ever unstained. With one final breath, vanquish my death and let you rest all my broken and bruised, every disease, all I was dead in my grave. She swallowed my flesh, poured out the blood for my resurrection. Death is no more. Trumpets will sound to carry me home. What joy there will be when I see your face. We shout for triumph, bellows of praise. All trumpets will sound to carry me home. What joy there will be when I see your face with shouts of triumph and bellows of praise. Let it be Jesus, only Jesus, all that I have, all that's within. Let it be Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Be Jesus.
So we're moving out of worship. Let's just kind of stay in that frame of mind for a minute. This is Kevin and Janae's last week. They're getting ready to go to Spring Arbor next week to Janae's taking on the worship pastor position there. Let's give her a round of applause for that, man. At the same time, it breaks our hearts to see them go, but we know that God has greatly gifted them. So just as we've spent a good 30 minutes now just singing whatever song comes to mind and worshiping God, let's bless them, that they take a little bit of 1208 and how we've pursued worship and bringing God to our area, building a throne for him through our praises. Let's bless them right now, commission them to go do what they're called to do. Would you guys, do you mind coming up? And if you're not feeling overly COVID sensitive, feel free to come forward and just lay hands on them. I would like to commission them in this time. God, these are moments that both beautiful moments of blessing and kind of suck at the same time. It is great to watch you raise up leaders, and Kevin and Janae have not only clearly shown that in their own lives, but it's been clear to me since day one. You brought them together, and you've brought the kingdom of heaven to Jackson and to all the areas that they go through, and to 1208 as they've brought it here with their good works, and with their faith, and with their declarations of the gospel. And we just commission them now. As you've raised them up as leaders, so you've also called them to ministry at the Arbor. And we are excited for them. We celebrate with them. And we're glad that it's not like Kansas or something. That we will still run into them, that they are still very close to us, that we can continue to celebrate with them. But we also know that we will feel their absence. So we celebrate, and we hurt a little, but for the kingdom. And so as they walk forward, you build for them strong relationships that they can press into. Would you bring whatever they've learned here with them as they go? God, I think of pretty much any time that we commission someone else out, we put upon them the 1208 blessing, and then we laugh because we have no idea what that means or what that is. But we do it anyways. We give them the 1208 blessing as they go. Would you go with them? Would their lives be ruined by what we've done here, that they might ruin other people's lives in the gospel as well? In Jesus' name, amen. Why do we let him pray? A few quick announcements for you. You can give online at 12greenwood.com/giving. You can give through PayPal. You don't need a PayPal account or anything like that to give. You can just use your debit card or whatever there. You can also give in this box up here. If you got paper or checks, just drop it in and we'll check it later. Check the checks. Next announcement, neighborhood groups are going on. There's one on Tuesdays at the Kayla's house. The Naps house starts with a K. I just went for the first K that I thought. Naps are back here in the corner. Wave, Naps. Hello. Yeah. So talk to them if you'd like to join them over towards the Walmart area. If you'd like to join a group over here, Thursdays at my house, 2 blocks that way, and we'll join you for either of those times. Coming soon in August, 6 weeks over the course of 12 weeks, so it's every other week. We've got these bands coming up. And we do have a leader for both the men and women's group. Essentially, you get together. It's a time for confession. It's a time for repentance. It's a time to talk about how the Spirit's growing in you, what He's doing. Other people will learn from you, and other people will grow from your experience. So we would love to have you be a part of that. Join us in August. More details coming soon. We also have children's ministry getting started. Mark Edwards, who's not here tonight, is getting ready to kind of piece together the pieces for it. But he can't do it alone. He needs some volunteer support. If you're a member here, then you can work with our children. If you're not a member here, you can become a member and then work with our children. We would love to have you do that, as we need your help. Anybody? Space Jam, Bugs Bunny. The first Space Jam, not the second. I don't know what. I think that's it. That's it. Okay. Let's move into our series on Romans. I'm sorry if this stand's blocking you. There's a camera on it. I'll try to move it slightly and just block other people instead. I don't know. Okay, so in Romans, we've been going over these different themes. And one of the themes that we've come through so far is a theme that we've seen many times throughout the ages as we have preached through the Bible. Specifically in Acts. In Acts, we saw this all the time, where Jesus, through the power of the Spirit, declared that he wanted the Gentiles to become his followers. And that was weird for them. The book of Acts struggles with this a lot. And we today, we just don't get it. And the reason that we don't get it is because for the most part, we're all the Gentiles. We're all the outsiders. We weren't following God. We're a part of the other nations that were in the Bible who had their own false gods. And so when we see the Bible struggling with us, we're like, what's the big deal? We follow Jesus. We know it's not weird. But it was weird for them. And I want to help you understand why a little bit more. Part of the reason it was weird for them is because religion and the state throughout ancient history always were the same thing. In other words, like for Israel, if you were an Israelite, you were not only under the king, be it David or Solomon or whoever else, you're not only under the state of Israel, you are also a follower of Yahweh, of the one true God. You are both of those things by being an Israelite. That's not how we think of America. It was that way for a while, where America happened to be looked at or thought to be so Christian that people were just like, well, Americans are Christians. That's never really been the case, and history shows that clearly. But that's been the way that a lot of people have assumed that as they've been growing up. But America, and at least the way that we see it now, is that we're this hodgepodge of all different kinds of people, of all different kinds of state and religion put together. But Christians are called, of course, to just follow one God, to follow Yahweh, and to follow his kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. That's what it was for the Jews. So for the Jews, it was weird. We often think of Christianity and Judaism as two different things. That's not the way that the Bible saw it. Christianity, for Paul, was Judaism. It was true Jewishness, because the Jews were waiting for a Messiah. And suddenly, Jesus came along, and some of the Jews started saying the Messiah came. Judaism has found its fulfillment. The king that we were waiting for is here. He was enthroned, albeit it was confusing. It was on a cross instead of a glorious
earthly throne, but now he's died, was pulled out of the grave, back to life into a new body, and ascended to heaven, where he sits on an even better throne than any earthly one that we could come up with. And so some Jews start preaching this. They're saying our Jewishness is fulfilled in Jesus. They weren't out to start a new religion. They were continuing their own. So now you've got kind of two schools of Judaism. You've got the school that says, no, we haven't seen our Messiah yet, and we're the Jews. And then you have this new school coming up that says, no, the Messiah has come, and the fullness of what it means to be Jewish is found in that King, in that Messiah. His name is Jesus Christ. And then Jesus started doing something weird. Through his Spirit, he started messing with the ancient lines of state and religion. If you were Jewish, if you were an Israelite, you were a Yahweh follower. You were a God follower. But now Jesus was saying, hey, I want you to take what it means to be Jewish, what it means to follow the one true God, what it means to follow Jesus, and extend that out to the rest of the world. And invite everyone to become Jewish, everyone to become Christian, everyone to become a Yahweh follower. Extend it out to everyone. And this messed with their heads. Because what it meant to be a Yahweh follower was that you lived by the law. That there's these 600 plus rules in the Bible, and you did your best to live by those. What it meant to be a God follower is that you had a mark upon your body, circumcision for them, that you bore this mark. And so if people wanted to come into your state, into your religion, well, how could they do that? They don't follow the law and they don't bear the mark. And how are they just suddenly supposed to take everything they've known about traditional Judaism, throw it out the window, and just bring in people from 70 other nations and hope that this won't turn into a crazy mess? And people like Paul come around, they're like, the crazy mess is what God's calling us into. It is going to get confusing. It is going to get complicated. We're going to have to rethink some things and figure some things out. And for Paul, in the book of Romans, it's his theology that he really wants to figure out. Okay, how is it now that we can bring in people, tell them to leave their false gods behind and come follow Yahweh? How can we go and tell the world to become Jewish, to become Christian? How can we go out and tell people that they can leave their nations behind and follow the one nation of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven? How can we do that? And that works out with all of our theology. The book of Romans is him trying to convince people that this can be done. And today we find ourselves in Romans 3. And like a good pastor, I don't know where I put my Bible. Wait. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Tyler, ladies and gentlemen, yes, the Bible finder himself. Oh, thank you very much. Usually I use electronics things, and yet they're broadcasting right now. So, Romans 3. In our last message, Paul looked at the Jews and he said, like, is this gospel just for us? Well, no, it's for the Gentiles also, and now we kind of continue that. What then? What advantage has the Jew? Or what is the value of circumcision, this mark that all Jewish people had? Much in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. In other words, the Jews are like God's mouthpiece. God spoke to the Jews and they spoke it out to the world. So that's a benefit to being Jewish throughout all history. What if some were unfaithful? Does their faithfulness nullify the faithfulness of God? By no means. So some Jews throughout history weren't faithful to the law. But Paul's like, does that mean God wasn't faithful to us? No, God is not a man, so he's faithful to us, even though we as humans are flawed. By no means. Let God be true, though everyone were a liar. As it is written, that you may be justified in your words, and prevail when you are judged. But if our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God, what shall we say? That God is unrighteous to inflict wrath upon us? I speak in a human way. By no means. For then how could God judge the world But if through my lie God's truth abounds to glory, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? And why not do evil that good may come? As some people slanderously charge us with saying. Their condemnation is just. I'm going to keep going. Let me pause right there. Because Paul is saying now people can come into the Jewish faith even though they didn't have the law before and have the mark of circumcision before, some people are taking what Paul said and running crazy with it, telling the whole world that you can live however you want. God is faithful no matter what. Go and sin as much as you want. God has the grace and will forgive you. Have you heard that gospel today? Because I sure have a million times. People took what Paul said, and they're like, that's what Paul's saying. We can do whatever we want. We don't need the law. We don't need to live right. And Paul looks at those people. He calls them out right here. He's like, some of you have slandered us, saying that we said this. That is not what we are saying. And we've gone through that in past weeks. That it does matter how you live. And on the final day of judgment, even if you are Christian, you go before the throne of God. All of your secrets are put bare before him. And you are judged with that in mind on top of being saved by Christ. And for some, there will actually be more treasure in heaven, whatever that means, because of how that judgment moment goes. So whether we are Christian or not, judgment is still in our future. But if we are Christian, we can also rest assured that we are saved. Okay, but Paul is not saying you can just live however you want, nothing matters. He's calling out the people who have taken his theology and turned it into that. And we need to do the same today. What then? Are we Jews any better off? No, not at all. For we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greek, are under sin, as it is written. And then Paul's going to quote a bunch of passages right here to remind us that we're all sinners no matter who we are. None is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an empty grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery. And the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. That was a bunch of passages Paul just quoted. Why did he do that? He wants to be clear. Ain't nobody righteous. Ain't nobody lived by the law. Even if you had the law as a Jew, you still sinned. You still done messed up. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law so that every mouth may be stopped. The whole world may be held accountable to God. That point right there, every mouth may be stopped. In ancient times, when you were in a court, there was this thing that would happen. If you were like in the courtroom and you were giving yourself away, clearly you are guilty. Clearly, based on something you said, you've given the evidence that you did something wrong. You could, you'd put your hand over your mouth to be like, well, hang on, I said that wrong. Let me say it again. All right. When you were done saying whatever you wanted to say in court, you would put your hand over your mouth as a way of saying, I'm done. That's all I wanted to say. But it seemed like that was used on Jesus. Jesus was brought up before the Pharisees, and he is speaking, and they thought he was guilty, and that he just keeps speaking and making himself look more and more guilty. Does anyone remember what the Pharisees do? They strike him on the mouth. They strike him on the mouth as though they're saying, you've done best, shut your mouth, Jesus. You just keep making yourself look more and more guilty the more you talk. So it's this idea. What Paul's saying right here is the world is so guilty, we all just need to put our hand over our mouth, because the more we talk, the more accused we are. We are all judged. We are all sinners. We have all messed up. He continues, for by works of law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. By the law, by living right, by doing good works, nobody throughout all of history, except for Jesus, has ever gotten this right. That includes the very first people, Adam and Eve, right? Very first people. You think right at the beginning, maybe we've got this margin of error coming ahead of us, but maybe the first people will get it right. They don't. Adam and Eve sinned. Instead of behaving like a human, they look to a lesser creature. Instead of behaving like the image of God, they look to a lesser creature, to a snake, and they listen to a beast. They listen to an animal. They listen to something not made in the image of God. And that snake invites him forward. Come, listen to me. Instead of being elevated to the level of being an image of God, listen to something lesser than. Listen to something worse. Listen to a beast. Listen to a snake. And they do. And from that day forward, God puts out a prophetic word. Look, humanity's messed up. The ground is cursed. Lives are cursed. Everything, even the earth itself, is messed up because of humanity's sin. But one day, this woman Eve will have a predecessor, a human who will come along and fix the world, who will get everything right. One day, there will be a human who can be held accountable to the law, who doesn't sin, who doesn't fail, who can fix humanity. One day, when that human comes, he will step on the snake, and the snake will bite his heel. So we keep waiting for that human all throughout history. Okay, all right. Adam and Eve have a kid. Is this going to be the one? Is he going to be the human that fixes it, like one generation later? No, their son kills their other son, so that wasn't the one. Okay, all right. Well, where's it going to go from here? Oh, well, then we get Nimrod, who's not a good guy. We get Lamech, who's not a good guy. Eventually, the whole world needs to be flooded, and only Noah's spared. So we're like, okay, Noah, he's the one guy worth not wiping humanity out. Is he the one? Will he restore the earth? The Bible writers don't know there's another 65 books to go. Well, to the New Testament. So I guess, like half of it. Is Noah going to be the one? No, Noah doesn't do great things. Something goes real wrong after the flood with him. We don't have time for that. Okay, well, who's coming up next? Abraham. God specifically calls out Abraham and Sarah. Maybe he will be the one. No, Abraham abuses his slaves, tries to find shortcuts around God, even though he's ultimately faithful to God, never gives up faith in God. He also is full of many of his mistakes. In fact, Abraham is, by definition, breaking the law because he's married to his half-sister. So it's like, he's already from the beginning doesn't live up to what the law is going to call him into. Okay, Abraham's going to have Isaac. Maybe Isaac's the one. We just kind of skip over his story. There's not much said about Isaac. Okay, well, maybe Isaac's kids. We'll get to Jacob and Esau. You know what's interesting about Jacob and Esau? Esau is born red and hairy, as though he's a beast. So, like, we're waiting. Is this the one? Is this the one who's gonna fix the world? Is this the human? And as he comes out, it's like that doesn't even quite. The way they describe him doesn't even sound human. It's as though he's already looking like a lesser creature. Okay, all right. I guess he wasn't the one. Wait, there's a twin. What's the twin gonna look like? The twin's doing two things. He's not doing two things. He's doing one thing. The twin is holding on to the heel of his brother. You know the last time we saw that word heel was in Genesis? It's a snake. It's going to bite at the heel. So we're waiting. Here's the twins. Which one's it going to be? Who's going to fix the world? First one comes out. That doesn't even exactly sound described as human. And the second one comes out, and that one's described in a way where we think of the snake that deceived Adam and Eve. And eventually we just get to this point. It's like, when is that human going to come? God promised Abraham it would come. God promised Eve it would come. Eventually we get to Jesus. After waiting many, many times. David, maybe he's the one. Solomon, maybe he's the one. Job, maybe he's the one. Daniel, maybe he's the one. No. But we get to Jesus, and Jesus lives the sinless life. Jesus never breaks the law. Jesus never does anything wrong. And we find out the way that he was capable of doing that was because God himself was willing to put on human flesh, come down to earth, live the perfect sinless life, die on a cross on our behalf, and that all of this would change everything. That our lives would no longer be determined upon the law, because the law could never save us. The law never did save us. The law actually just made us more and more and more guilty. Put your hand over your mouth. How many of the 600 laws have you broken? Over and over and over and over again, Paul says, the Jews try to live by the law, they failed. The Gentiles don't live by the law, and if we try to hold them up to it, they would fail. Even in the book of Acts, when they're trying to reach the Gentiles, they're like, which law should we hold them up to? They more or less decide on like 3 or 4 that generally encompass everything. That they shouldn't be wound up in idols and false gods, that they shouldn't be living sexually immoral lives, and I'm forgetting the third one, but essentially they're like, what is the whole concept of the whole law? How will these Gentiles still need to live to really be following God? And they whittle it down, because they know that the law has been a weight on their lives, and the law has been a weight on the entire world. No human has ever lived up to it. No human ever will live up to it. And therefore, the one who did, who is God in flesh himself, who is Jesus, he's the only one who can save us. Because if the law is what saves us, we're all screwed. But if Jesus is who saves us, because he did live by the law correctly, then whether you're Jewish or Gentile, whether you had the law or not, if you appeal to Jesus, he can then appeal to God on your behalf. You can be saved, not by the law, but by a man. This is the good news. Romans has been hard so far. The first 3 chapters of Romans, we realize the way we live our lives, by Paul's account, really, really matters. But the good news that we're going to especially jump into next week is that Jesus is now the one who saves us, not the law. It still matters how we live, but the whole system has changed. The new covenant has taken some things out and put our focus on something new, something else. So, well, I shouldn't even say took things out, rather like honed in on what the point of the law and everything else was, and has honed it all into Jesus. So, I wish I could keep going, but I can't, because, we just don't have time for all that. What time is it? The clock, I fixed it, but apparently it broke. So, 7 o'clock? All right. I was going to do one more song, but I guess we're done. So, it's 6:50. We're going to do one more song. If you need to leave, you can leave. We're going to sing one more song and just kind of like take this moment of how we're all sinners and how Jesus comes to save us. We subject it to him. He is our salvation. If you need to leave, go ahead. But if you'd like to stay and sing with us, please stand, and we will do one more. Everyone's like, Janae made us stay longer. She's like, you don't have to deal with me anymore. I can do whatever I want.
What song are you singing?
All we sinners. I also need to say this now because I will forget immediately. Kevin and Janae have done a lot of the transporting people around to get here who don't have transportation. And when they're taking off, that means all these people who have needed transportation will no longer have transportation. We could really use some help on that front. If you're willing to do that, please talk to us before you go. Thanks. In fact, you can just talk to Kevin and Janae because they're the ones who will know. Sing this one final song together. Am I working? thank you that you came. You knew that no human would ever get it right. You knew when you prophesied to Adam and Eve that they would one day have a descendant that would fix everything. You knew that it would be no mere descendant. It wouldn't be Cain or Abel, Abraham or Sarah, Isaac or Rebecca, Jacob or Esau. The list goes on and on and on and on. Even when we look at the best of your prophets, the best of the righteous people on earth, even Job himself, who was certain that he hadn't done anything deserving of the pain poured out on him, and you said that he was right. Even Job himself was not good enough, was not righteous enough, was not sinless enough to fix the world, to rebuke the curse, to not be worthy of the death of sin, the curse of sin, the weight of sin. The false god of this earth, Satan himself. You knew that every human would go the way of the snake, that every human would eventually bite the heel of someone, that you one day would make yourself like a human, setting aside all of the things that were incompatible with being human. You set it all aside, you put on flesh, you were born. You didn't just manifest, you were born of a human. And then you did it. You, God in flesh, you lived a perfect, sinless life. You broke the curse. You weren't worthy of the death. You weren't subject to the God of death. You weren't subject to the snake, to Satan. And so when you died and you went to the underworld, you walked right up to Satan. You stole the keys from around his neck. And you broke the curse. And you said, if anybody follows me, that's what matters now. You are justified not by the law, but you are justified by the manifestation of the law in flesh. Jesus himself, who can go before his Father and say, this person is one of ours because they follow us. This person is one of ours because they live for the kingdom of heaven. This person is one of ours because they are the Yahweh follower, a citizen of heaven. They lived as an ambassador of heaven while they were on the earth. They went to the rest of the world and said, come, become Jewish, become Christian, become Yahweh followers, become citizens of heaven, become obedient to the law, which is Christ. Find yourself before Jesus, the Son of God, Son of Man.
Like the blood, King
Thanks for being patient with us. Go in peace, and we will see you guys next Sunday, if not sooner. Thanks.
Bye.